My mill threatened court if I didn't give custody of my daughter to my sister-in-law, accusing me of being an irresponsible parent. It was supposed to be a fresh start. After years of heartache and loss, a single father named Daniel had finally found a rhythm to life again, caring for his 3-year-old daughter, Lily, alone after losing his beloved wife, Sarah, to cancer. Their lives, though scarred, had a new sense of routine. There were bedtime stories filled with fairy tales, trips to the park where Lily's laughter echoed through the trees, and quiet moments at home where father and daughter sat, drawing pictures of happier tomorrows. Yet, unbeknownst to Daniel, a storm was brewing, a storm that would shatter the illusion of peace and test his resolve as a father. The story began when Daniel received an unexpected visit from his mother-in-law, Karen. She was a stern woman, one who had been present in his life since his marriage to Sarah but had grown distant after Sarah's death. Karen came with a chilling request, one that would forever alter the course of Daniel's life. She insisted that Lily be handed over to Sarah's younger sister, Emily, and her husband, John, for custody. According to Karen, they could provide Lily with a proper family. For a moment, Daniel's world felt like it had stopped spinning. His daughter was all that was left of his beloved Sarah, and now someone wanted to take her away. But Daniel wasn't one to back down. He politely declined, affirming that he was more than capable of raising Lily. He'd taken great care to adjust his life, rearranging his work schedule, hiring a loving nanny for support, and building a nurturing environment for his daughter. However, Karen wouldn't hear of it. She accused him of selfishness and of denying Lily the chance at a normal family life. To make matters worse, she threatened to take him to court, claiming she had evidence that he was an inadequate father. The shock that coursed through Daniel was profound. He had always done his best to maintain a positive relationship with Sarah's family. For Lily's sake, he never imagined the people who had once been his support system could turn into adversaries. Despite the hurt, Daniel remained determined. He documented all his interactions with Karen, took careful notes of every detail of Lily's care, and sought legal advice to prepare for what lay ahead. In the days that followed, the once loving grandparents turned into foes, launching an unexpected and brutal custody battle. A letter from Karen's lawyer arrived, filled with accusations of neglect and emotional instability. The letter claimed that Daniel worked too much, leaving Lily with strangers, an insinuation aimed at the nanny who had become like family. It even painted his grieving process as evidence that he couldn't provide the emotional support Lily needed. The accusations felt like a blow to Daniel's chest, twisting every sacrifice he'd made for his daughter into something dark and malevolent. Daniel refused to let fear consume him. He contacted his lawyer, who assured him that the allegations were unfounded. His lawyer recommended gathering character references from those who knew him and Lily best, her preschool teachers, her pediatrician, and friends who had witnessed his devotion. As Daniel reached out for help, the outpouring of support was overwhelming. People from all corners of his life rallied around him. The pediatrician spoke of Lily's health and happiness. Her teachers attested to her joyful nature and strong bonds with peers. And even members of Sarah's family voiced their disapproval of Karen's actions. It was a silver lining in the dark cloud that had enveloped Daniel's life. Yet, the most unexpected confrontation came not from lawyers or letters but from Emily and her husband, John, who arrived unannounced at Daniel's doorstep. They came under the guise of concern for Lily's future. But as the conversation unfolded, it became clear their intentions were less altruistic. Emily spoke of the importance of a mother figure, of the love she could provide. But Daniel could hear the undertones of Karen's manipulations. He stayed calm, reiterating that Lily was his child, that she was happy, and that nothing would tear them apart. But then Emily's tone shifted. She accused Daniel of being selfish, of denying Lily a real family. The situation escalated further when Emily claimed that Daniel intended to remarry and replace the role of mother in Lily's life, an accusation so unfounded it left him momentarily speechless. Emily's anger morphed into desperation. She shouted that they would see him in court, that they would fight for custody until Lily was theirs. It was a painful encounter, not just because of the threats, but because it made Daniel realize how far the people he once trusted were willing to go. Later that night, as he tucked Lily into bed, he hugged her a little tighter. He vowed silently that no matter how challenging the road ahead might be, he would never allow anyone to separate them. The next day brought a revelation that shattered any last hope Daniel had of understanding Karen's motives. A call from Elizabeth, Sarah's grandmother and the family's voice of reason, shed light on the real reason behind the sudden push for custody. It wasn't about Lily needing a mother figure or a stable family, it was about money. Sarah had inherited a substantial amount of money from her late grandfather, which had been placed in a trust fund for Lily. The trust would only become accessible when Lily turned 25. Karen and Emily, desperate to alleviate their own financial troubles, saw Lily as the key to the funds. Hearing this, Daniel's sorrow turned to rage. The idea that they were willing to manipulate, threaten, and tear apart a family just for financial gain was incomprehensible. He immediately contacted his lawyer, taking steps to protect Lily's inheritance, ensuring that the trust was secure, and that Karen and Emily could never touch it. It was one thing to fight for custody under misguided love. It was entirely different when it became clear that Lily was nothing more than a pawn in their greedy schemes. A week later, Karen reached out again, this time wanting to meet in person to resolve matters. Daniel agreed, hoping against hope that they could find common ground. They met in a quiet cafe, and Karen, accompanied by Emily, tried to present a softer, more conciliatory front. They spoke of frequent visits, even overnight stays, trying to make it sound like a reasonable compromise. But Daniel was done playing games. He calmly told them that he knew about the inheritance. He watched as their faces turned pale, the facade of concern crumbling away to reveal the truth. Daniel made it clear that he would no longer tolerate their behavior. He would fight with every ounce of strength he had, and if they continued their attempts to separate him from his daughter, he would pursue legal action against them for harassment. He rose to leave, issuing one final warning. They could either be a part of Lily's life on his terms, respecting the love and stability he provided, or they could face the consequences of their greed. The choice was theirs. Months passed, and slowly, life began to settle again. Karen and Emily backed off, finally realizing that Daniel would not be intimidated. They issued apologies, and while Daniel accepted them, he remained wary. He allowed them supervised visits with Lily once a month, for her sake more than theirs. He knew how important family could be, even when it was fractured. Daniel also started a support group for single parents who had lost their partners. It was a place for people to share their stories, their fears, and their triumphs. Through this group, Daniel found solace and strength, and it reminded him that he was not alone in his journey. For Lily, life resumed its joyful rhythm. She grew more vibrant every day, her laughter filling the house that had once felt so empty. Daniel often spoke to her about her mother, sharing stories of Sarah's kindness, her love for music, and her dreams for Lily's future. He wanted his daughter to know that, despite everything, she was deeply loved by both her parents. The experience changed Daniel in ways he never expected. It made him more protective, more cautious, but also more appreciative of the simple moments he shared with Lily. He knew that the battle with Karen and Emily had not only been about custody but about the kind of future he wanted for his daughter, a future where she was safe from manipulation, where she could grow up surrounded by love, not ulterior motives. And so, as the sun set on another day, Daniel sat with Lily on the porch, watching her draw pictures of castles and dragons. He realized that, despite the hardships, he had succeeded. He had kept his promise to Sarah. He had protected their daughter, ensuring that her childhood would be filled with the kind of love and stability that she deserved. Daniel's story is a powerful reminder of the lengths a parent will go to protect their child. It shows us that sometimes, those closest to us can turn into adversaries, driven by motives that have nothing to do with love or care. It also teaches us the importance of standing firm in the face of adversity, of trusting in our own ability to provide the best for our children, even when others try to convince us otherwise. One of the most striking lessons from Daniel's journey is the importance of seeking support. Whether it was the legal guidance from his lawyer or the character references from his community, Daniel never hesitated to reach out for help. This support network not only strengthened his case but also gave him the emotional resilience to face each challenge head-on. Another key takeaway is the power of transparency and truth. By confronting Karen and Emily about their true motives, Daniel was able to dismantle their efforts to manipulate the situation. It was a difficult conversation, but it was necessary to protect Lily's future. This part of the story highlights the value of open communication and the courage it takes to address uncomfortable truths. Lastly, Daniel's creation of a support group for single parents is a testament to the healing power of community. In sharing his story with others, he not only found solace for himself but also offered hope and guidance to those facing similar struggles. It is a reminder that, no matter how alone we may feel, there are always others who understand and who are willing to stand by our side. Daniel's determination, love, and resilience are what ultimately safeguarded Lily's future. His story is not just about winning a custody battle, it is about the enduring bond between a father and his daughter, and the lengths to which love will go to protect what matters most. It is a story of hope, of overcoming betrayal, and of creating a new normal after loss. It shows us that, even in the darkest of times, love can be the guiding light that leads us through. Cousin falsely accused me of **uld. Family cut me off. Now she's dying. Admitted the truth, but they still want me to stay silent. The day that tore my life apart began just like any other. I was 18, carefree, and full of hope, but in a heartbeat, everything changed. It all started when my cousin, Jade, came to visit, carrying with her a storm that would soon turn my world upside down. We had been close once, growing up side by side like siblings, but a few years had driven a wedge between us. When she showed up at my doorstep that day, I thought it would be just another argument about her disagreements with her father. Little did I know, it would be the last time I saw my family the same way again. Jade and I were alone in the house when she began talking about her troubles. She was upset, once again, about my uncle's decision not to fund her studies indefinitely. I tried to be patient, but as she droned on about how unfair it was, I couldn't help but express my thoughts. I told her, perhaps too bluntly, that my uncle had done enough for her. He had raised her on his own, saved for her education, and now she needed to start standing on her own 2 feet. My words were meant to push her towards self-reliance, but they had the opposite effect. She lashed out, calling me selfish and pampered. I could see the rage in her eyes, but I had no idea the depths of what she was capable of. The next morning, I was awakened by my parents, their faces stern and filled with concern. Jade and my uncle were downstairs. My heart sank as my parents told me it was serious. I went down, and there she was, acting hysterical, accusing me of something unspeakable, something I never did. She claimed I had assaulted her the night before. I was stunned, unable to comprehend what was happening. My uncle looked at me with disgust, and my parents couldn't even meet my eyes. I tried to protest, to tell them she was lying, but they wouldn't listen. They begged my uncle not to go to the police, and in exchange, they promised to get rid of me. And just like that, my life as I knew it was over. My parents packed my things and sent me off to live with my great-uncle, a man known in the family for his harsh temperament. He was not someone I ever wanted to live with, but I had no choice. My family cut me off completely, and Jade took everything that had once been mine, including my college fund. I was left with nothing but my innocence, which no one believed in. My great-uncle was cruel, constantly mocking me, reminding me that my own parents had disowned me. He didn't know the details, but he knew enough to make my life hell. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. I was alone, without a single friend or family member who believed in me. The pain was unbearable at times. I found myself questioning my own worth, wondering what I had done to deserve this. The people who were supposed to love and protect me had abandoned me based on a lie. I fell into a deep depression, struggling to find any reason to keep going. The isolation was suffocating, and the emotional wounds seemed impossible to heal. I knew I couldn't stay with my great-uncle forever, so I started looking for work. It was the only way I could regain some control over my life. Eventually, I got a job at a warehouse. It was grueling work, but it paid enough for me to move out. I found a small apartment with 2 other guys from work, both of whom were struggling just as much as I was. We bonded over our hardships, and slowly, I began to rebuild my life. The first few months in the apartment were rough. We had very little money, and we often had to choose between paying rent or buying food. But despite the hardships, there was a sense of camaraderie between us. We were all in this together, and that made it bearable. I started to see a glimmer of hope. For the first time since the accusation, I felt like I had a chance at a normal life. My roommates became my new family. And together, we supported each other through the tough times. 3 years passed. I worked hard, saving every penny I could. I moved up in my job, eventually landing a better position in sales. I even started to think about applying to college again. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of hope. Then, out of the blue, I got an email from my father. It was the first time I had heard from him since the day they sent me away. He apologized, explaining that Jade had finally admitted she lied. She was dying of cancer. And in her guilt, she confessed everything. Reading that email, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, and even a strange sense of vindication. My father asked if I would be willing to come back, to see them again, now that the truth was out. But I wasn't sure if I could forgive them. They had abandoned me when I needed them the most. They had taken Jade's word over mine without question. And in doing so, they had destroyed my life. I talked to my friends, the only family I had left, about what I should do. They told me I didn't owe my parents anything. They reminded me of the years I had lost because of Jade's lie, of the nights I spent wondering if I'd ever be able to prove my innocence. They were right. I decided I wasn't going to let Jade's lie define me any longer. I was going to tell my story, to let the world know what had really happened. I posted everything online, the truth about what Jade had done. How my parents had believed her without question. How I had been forced to start over from nothing. The response was overwhelming. Friends and family members I hadn't heard from in years reached out to me, offering their support. They told me they had always thought something was off about Jade's story, but they didn't know how to reach me. They had been told I wanted to be left alone, that I was too ashamed to face anyone. It was all lies. But now, finally, the truth was out. My parents tried to contact me again, begging me not to go public with the story. They said Jade was suffering enough, that there was no need to ruin her reputation now that she was dying. But I couldn't bring myself to care. She had taken so much from me, and I had spent too long hiding in the shadows because of her lies. I needed to take my life back, and that meant telling the truth. In the end, I decided not to see my parents. They had made their choice 3 years ago, and now I was making mine. I had found a new family, people who believed in me, who stood by me even when things were tough. I didn't need my parents' approval anymore. I had spent too long trying to earn their love, only to realize that it was conditional. They had chosen Jade over me, and now they would have to live with the consequences of that choice. I went back to the city where I had grown up, not to see my parents, but to reconnect with the friends and family members who had supported me from afar. It was one of the best decisions I had ever made. I stayed with old friends, visited relatives who had always been kind to me. They welcomed me back with open arms. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. The experience taught me a lot about family, loyalty, and the importance of standing up for yourself. I learned that sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. But I also learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stand by you when the rest of the world turns away. It's about the friends who become brothers, the strangers who offer you a helping hand when you need it most. Jade's lies nearly destroyed me, but in the end, they made me stronger. I had to start over, to build a new life from the ground up. And while it wasn't easy, it was worth it. I am proud of the person I've become, and I wouldn't change a thing about my journey. I survived, I thrived, and now, I'm finally free. After reconnecting with the friends and family members who supported me, I decided to take another step toward healing. I began volunteering at a local shelter, helping others who had faced their own hardships. I found solace in giving back to the community, in being a source of strength for those who felt as lost as I once did. It was through this work that I met people who had faced similar betrayals, people whose lives had been torn apart by lies. Just like mine, we shared our stories, our pain, and our triumphs. It helped me realize that I wasn't alone, that my experience, as painful as it was, could be a beacon of hope for others. One day, I received a message from someone I hadn't expected, Jade's father. My uncle. He wanted to meet, to apologize for everything that had happened. At first, I was hesitant. The wounds were still fresh, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to face him. But something inside me told me that I needed to hear him out. That maybe this was the final step in my journey to healing. We met at a small cafe. Away from the city. He looked older, more worn down than I remembered. As soon as he saw me, he broke down in tears. He apologized over and over, saying he had failed me, that he had let his grief and Jade's manipulation blind him to the truth. He told me he had always been proud of me, that he regretted every moment he hadn't been there for me. It was a difficult conversation, but it was one I needed. Hearing his remorse helped me find a sense of closure. I knew that forgiveness wasn't something that happened overnight, but in that moment, I realized that holding onto the anger was only hurting me. I didn't forgive him entirely that day, but I took the first step. I told him I needed time, and he understood. We parted ways, and as I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I knew I still had a long journey ahead of me, but I was ready to face it, one day at a time. In the years that followed, I continued to grow. I applied to college again and was accepted into a program that I was passionate about. I continued working, saving money, and building a life that I could be proud of. My friends, my real family, stood by me every step of the way, cheering me on as I pursued my dreams. I learned that life is full of unexpected turns, that sometimes we have to lose everything to find out who we really are. Today, I am not just surviving, I am thriving. I have a career that I love, friends who are like brothers, and a sense of purpose that I never had before. I've learned that the past doesn't define me, that the lies and betrayal were just one chapter in my story. And now, I am writing the rest of it, on my own terms. If there's one thing I want others to take away from my story, it's this: no matter how dark things may seem, there is always hope. The truth will come out. And when it does, you have the power to take back your life. Stand up for yourself, surround yourself with people who truly care, and never let anyone take away your right to live your truth. The journey may be long, but in the end, it will be worth it. And remember, you are stronger than you think, and your story is far from over.